When Amazon bought Zappos for $1.2 billion in 2009, Jeff Bezos gave rare praise to the company. I've seen a lot of companies, and I have never seen a company with a culture like Zappos. Coming from the man who built Amazon, this wasn't just a compliment, it was validation for something extraordinary. The genius behind it all was Tony Hsieh. Tony didn't just build an online shoe store, he revolutionized the entire concept of corporate culture and customer service. He was the CEO who made employee happiness the #1 priority and turned it into a billion-dollar empire. He would literally pay new hires $2,000 to quit if they weren't passionate about the business. He built a company that was so beloved by customers, they would call just to chat with customer service. But just 11 years after this billion-dollar exit, Tony Hsieh was found dead at age 46. He was alone in a burning shed in Connecticut, surrounded by nitrous oxide canisters and the wreckage of a brilliant mind that had lost its way. The man who delivered happiness to millions couldn't deliver it to himself. This story is about the insane rise and tragic fall of a visionary genius. Welcome back to The Clubhouse, a YouTube channel where I go deep on some of the greatest entrepreneurs whose stories you won't hear anywhere else. This channel is designed to give you insights for free so you can apply the same tactics to your own life and businesses. Tony Hsieh had that entrepreneurial spark long before Zappos existed. Even as a kid, Tony was different. Born in 1973 to Taiwanese immigrants in Illinois, his family moved to California when he was 5. He was always different, even selling personalized buttons in middle school and later compiling study guides at Harvard to sell to classmates. He also managed the Dorm pizza business, where one of his best customers was a guy named Alfred Lin. Remember that name. After graduating Harvard with a comp sci degree, Tony did what was expected. He took a job at Oracle. He lasted just 5 months though. Corporate life just wasn't for him. In 1996, at just 22 years old, Tony co-founded Link Exchange with college friends, an internet advertising cooperative where websites displayed each other's banner ads. They started by cold emailing webmasters from their living room, and within 90 days, they had 20,000 participating websites. By 1998, they were rotating 5 million ads daily with 400,000 members. Microsoft bought Link Exchange for $265 million, and Tony, he personally netted $40 million at just the age of 24. But the experience of building this company taught Tony something crucial that he would bring to his next one. As Link Exchange grew, the culture deteriorated, and Tony no longer enjoyed working at his own company. He watched talented people get miserable and saw what happens when you prioritized growth over culture. With the money he made from Link Exchange, Tony and Alfred Lin founded Venture Frogs, an investment firm with a playful name that hinted at Tony's unconventional approach. They invested in startups like OpenTable, but their most important investment came from an unlikely pitch. A guy named Nick Swinburne wanted to sell shoes online. Tony's initial reaction was skeptical. Tony thought it was a dumb idea at first. Who would buy shoes without trying them on? But Nick had compelling data. The US footwear market was $40 billion, and 5% was already sold through mail order catalogs. People were buying shoes sight unseen, but they just needed a better experience. Venture Frogs invested $500 grand into what was then called ShoeSite.com, soon rebranded as Zappos. Tony began as an investor and advisor, but soon he saw something bigger than just another e-commerce play. By 2001, Tony had become co-CEO of Zappos. The company was struggling, burning through cash, and most investors thought selling shoes online was still insane. Tony even had to sell his own portfolio of apartments to keep the company afloat, personally investing $15 million of his own money. But Tony wasn't just building another online retailer. He was conducting an experiment in radical customer service. The philosophy was simple: treat customers so well, they become evangelists for your brand. That meant free shipping both ways with a 365-day return policy, and 24/7 customer service with no scripts and no time limits. Agents were empowered to do whatever it took to make customers happy, even if that meant directing them to competitors. There was one famous customer service call at Zappos that lasted over 10 hours. Agents would send flowers to customers going through tough times and help people order pizza if that's what they needed. The goal wasn't efficiency here, it was emotional connection. 75% of Zappos purchases started to come from repeat customers, and 44% of new customers came from word-of-mouth referrals. The marketing became free because the customer service was so good. But Tony knew that amazing customer service required amazing employees, and to make that happen, company culture needed to be the #1 priority. Tony believed if you got the culture right, everything else would follow. Great service, strong brand, sustainable growth. It wasn't just feel-good corporate speak, Tony was making this measurable and actionable. In 2006, after collecting extensive employee input, Zappos formally adopted 10 core values that weren't just poster slogans, but the operational foundation of the company. Zappos hired and fired based on cultural fit, regardless of job performance. There was even this informal shuttle driver test. If you were rude to the person who picked you up for your interview, you wouldn't get hired. Interviewers would ask questions like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how weird are you? They wanted to see if employees would align with a core value, create fun and a little weirdness. But Tony's most famous cultural innovation was the offer. After an intensive 4-week training program, Zappos offered people money to quit. It started at $100 and eventually rose to $2,000, at that time a 1-month salary. Only 2 to 3% of people took the offer. The purpose was to filter out anyone who wasn't genuinely passionate about being there. Jeff Bezos thought this pay-to-quit program was so genius, he later adopted it at Amazon. The results of the business spoke for themselves. Zappos grew from 1.6 million in sales in 2000 to over $1 billion by 2008, and it consistently ranked as Fortune's best companies to work for. Tony's book, Delivering Happiness, became a bestseller. Business schools created case studies about the model, and he was invited to speak at conferences around the world. But the real validation came in 2009 when Amazon offered to buy Zappos for $1.2 billion. Bezos personally courted Tony, recognizing something special about the company. He said, "Zappos has a customer obsession which is so easy for me to admire. I get all weak-kneed when I see a customer-obsessed company." Now, Tony just had one crucial condition about this offer. Zappos would remain autonomous from Amazon and preserve its unique culture. Tony had built something so compelling, the world's largest retailer was willing to let it sit on its own so it could study it. After the Amazon acquisition, Tony set his sights on an even more ambitious project. If he could create happiness and community within a company, why not an entire city? In 2010, he personally committed $350 million to the Downtown Project, an effort to revitalize downtown Las Vegas. Tony even moved Zappos headquarters downtown in 2013 as an anchor for the project. While it brought a renewed energy to a neglected area, it also faced significant challenges and criticism. Several of his initiatives failed, and critics accused Tony of changing goals when the original ones weren't met. The Downtown Project revealed both Tony's visionary ambition and the limitations of applying corporate culture principles to complex urban environments. It was also during this period that cracks began to show in Tony's personal life. By 2019, Tony was struggling with severe mental health issues, insomnia, depression, social anxiety, and growing paranoia. He began using substances to cope, starting with alcohol, Adderall, Xanax, and Ambien, but the situation escalated dramatically with ketamine and nitrous oxide. By some reports, he was consuming up to 50 nitrous oxide cartridges per day. Under the influence, Tony became obsessed with the simulation hypothesis, believing that drugs could help him defeat the simulation. He engaged in biohacking experiments, starving himself of oxygen, fasting until his weight dropped below 100 pounds, and depriving himself of food and water. The COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 made everything worse, and it cut him off from the social interactions he craved. In summer 2020, Tony moved to Park City, Utah, where he bought a dozen properties and created a bizarre incentive scheme called the 10X program, paying people in his entourage commissions for spending his money. Some described this new entourage that formed around him as sycophants and opportunists, people who were taking advantage from him and stealing money from his fortune. Old friends who tried to intervene found themselves pushed away. In August 2020, Tony retired as CEO of Zappos, with reports suggesting Amazon executives intervened due to concerns about his escalating substance abuse. On November 18, 2020, Tony was visiting an associate in New London, Connecticut when a fire broke out. He became trapped in a locked pool shed that contained nitrous oxide canisters, marijuana candles, and a propane heater. Firefighters had to force entry to rescue him, but after severe burns and smoke inhalation, Tony succumbed to his injuries, dying 9 days later on November 27, 2020, at the age of 46. The official ruling was an accidental death, but given his documented substance abuse and erratic behavior, many believed his compromised state contributed to the tragedy. Even in death, Tony's story remained complex and unresolved. So how do we measure the life of Tony Hsieh? He was undeniably a visionary who revolutionized business culture. The Zappos model influenced countless companies, but his story is such a profound tragedy. The man who understood happiness so deeply in a business context couldn't find it in his personal life, and the same obsessive drive that made him great turned destructively inward. Tony Hsieh delivered happiness to millions, and his methods will influence business leaders for generations. But his tragic end reminds us that success without personal well-being is ultimately hollow. The happiness CEO couldn't deliver happiness to himself. A visionary genius, a revolutionary leader, a cautionary tale. Tony will always be remembered for his innovations, and especially his generosity. While it was lost for 10 years, a will dated from 2015 was discovered, reportedly including significant charitable donations to Harvard, UNICEF, the American Red Cross, and other organizations. His complex legacy inspires and warns in equal measure. Let me know in the comments if you were ever a customer of Zappos or bought shoes on Amazon and experienced the customer service magic the company created. And make sure to subscribe to the Clubhouse, because stories like this deserve being told.